All right, are we connected?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know when I'm on. And I'm good.
Can I see your mic?
Yeah, sure.
Good now?
I felt like I pushed the button.
Oh, okay.
Good.
You got him? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. If you've been waiting for us to get the tech part started, I apologize. I'm DC Kashyap. I'm the workshop chair for the KC Clay Guild. We have Gary Long with us today, and he is going to demonstrate how to throw big. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in on YouTube, and I will forward them over to Gary. All right. Thanks.
All right.
Gary.
Thanks, Deborah. All right. So today I'm going to be throwing with 20 pounds. I've got 3 different balls of clay, and I've got a couple of pieces here that are already freshly thrown. And for time's sake, I really wanted to get something already made so that when we get into shaping, they've had a little time to rest and to stand up a little bit, so they're that much more ready to go. And really in the beginning of this session, I want to cover basics, which is going to be centering, opening, compressing, getting your 20 pounds of clay set up so that you can start bringing it up. So that's really going to be the beginning. And just to cover all bases, let me explain what kind of clay this is. This is recycled clay. So it's reclaimed from our school. And it's a mixture of stoneware, porcelain, probably some B-mix. But those are the main clays that are in this. So this is sort of a hodgepodge of everything, which I think throws great. Stoneware is probably the easiest to learn from. And this is probably second.
And it's $5 for 12.5 pounds.
There you go.
Can't get a better deal. Available at the KC Clay Guild when we've got it.
That's right. So what I like to do is I like to get the clay wedged really good and get it into this shape to begin with. And I like it to almost be pointed or round on the bottom, because when you put it on the bat, and I know everybody's familiar with what a bat is, but I always throw on plastic bats because they just seem to work the best for me. I try to get it as center as I can right out of the gate. And I try to get it as symmetrical and close to center before I even get out of the wheel. So I'll just do this and get it really close to center just to start off. Okay, and even before I start, put my finger on it and just kind of see how center this already is. And you know, it's not center, but it's not far from it. And that just makes my job easier. If I start off and it's a little bit wonky at the beginning, you're going to do a lot of fighting. So I see that there's lines all the way around this. So it's hitting in different places, but it's close to center. So mostly center. Now the first third of this that I'm going to be demonstrating, I use some water. But after that, it's good to get the slip off. If you're throwing big, you're trying to throw thin, you don't want to keep adding water to it. So just at the initial beginning, the first third of the whole process is where you use the most water. So I'll get plenty in the beginning. I'm going to talk a little bit about body ergonomics when you're throwing. What I try to do is use my body weight as an asset. I try to use it as a lever, and I use leverage, and I lean into the clay. I'm not pressing at all. If anything, I'm using this hand to pull it in, But most of this is my elbow and my pelvis and my hips trying to drive into the center of the clay. And then this hand is just pulling it in, and it should make the clay more center and rise up a little bit. As I do that, I just bring my hand up and I maintain constant pressure. And really the secret to centering is consistency. Don't let go fast. Always let go slow. And using your body weight, I don't know how much my body weighs, from my waistline up, but it's probably like 100 pounds. So I can literally just lean into this and put 100 pounds into this ball of clay. And now it's not so daunting to try to control. Very easy.
So Gary, you're kind of, I understand you're using your body weight, but you're
Right.
pushing in with your right hand, you said also?
My left hand is driving through the center of this piece,
Okay,
just like I'm moving right now.
okay. So your right hand's not doing much? Just
This right hand's gathering. So
Okay,
excellent question. So this hand over here is gathering the clay up consistently, and I'm sensing what the clay is doing. And I feel like the bottom half right now is centering up pretty easy. It's this top half that's really off now. So I'll go ahead and bring this up. And then when I get to this point where I don't have the same kind of leverage, I don't have my hand up against the wheel head, I don't have my elbow and in as solid of a place as I'd like it to be. So what I do is I just center just the top by itself. I just squeeze in. I can use body weight with 3 pounds of clay, but then I'll gather in this middle spot. I'll kind of harmonize them together. So now it's mostly center. It's still kind of wonky down here, but I'm going to press, and I'm going to use this technique that I talked about to
Gary, I have a
center it up.
question from someone. Are you
Sure.
right or left-handed?
I'm ambidextrous.
Okay.
So I write with my right hand,
Okay.
but I was left-handed for a long time when I was a kid,
Okay.
and I've learned to use both hands to do a lot of things. I don't write anymore with my left hand, but I noticed that it really helps for pottery. Sometimes I shape with my left hand
Nice.
on the inside.
Okay.
Sometimes I shape with my right hand on the inside and my left hand on the outside. It just depends. And I'll probably touch base on that later a little bit.
Are you spinning the wheel right-handed way or just?
Yes, this is going counterclockwise.
Okay.
Counterclockwise. Yep. Which is standard. That's what pretty much everybody does in North America, or correct?
Yeah.
Where they do it in Korea.
Well, yeah, clockwise and left and clockwise.
Oh, really? Cool. All right. So this is starting to get center. I'm going to try to make the top as flat as I can. Maybe a little bit of an arc to it. And the sides, I want to be almost like a volcano. I want it to be leaning in on itself. Most of, probably 2/3 of this clay's development is going to be some form, some version of this kind of shape, where the top is smaller than the bottom. It's always leaning in because centrifugal force wants to throw it out. We want to build it so that that doesn't happen as easy. So we're center enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find, I like to call this middling. Middling, centering. Middling to me makes more sense. You're trying to find the middle of this piece. So I put my thumb in the middle of it, right on top, and I try to feel the clay spinning all the way around it. I find that small focal point, and I just control my thumb, and I press in, and I make a slow, deliberate indentation. Once that gets to a certain point where I feel like I've marked my target, I'll add a little more water. I'll do it again, but I'll try to press into the clay with my thumb and go as deep as I can, which is really not that deep. It's only maybe 3 inches. And then I'll add more water. Now I can put one thumb in and very carefully open it up a little bigger. Now I can get a few fingers in, and I just keep opening. Slowly and controlled. I'm using this part of my hand, giving it sort of a compression pull, if you will, or a compression press. This as I'm opening, and now I have room to do it again. This time I'm going to do it with these fingers. I'm going to find that access point, that middle, the part that's right in the center. I'm going to drive down. And I'm going to keep driving down until I feel like I'm about 1 inch from the wheel head. This is something that takes a little bit of development, you know. You do it 2 or 3 times, you'll go past the mark, or you won't go deep enough. That's all okay. Getting it where there's plenty of extra clay down there is probably the best way to go in the beginning, because you can always test it with a needle tool and find how thick your floor is. I'm still pressing down, but now I'm actually leaning back. So the fulcrum I talked about that pressed, the upper body with the body weight, now I'm literally leaning back, like I'm leaning back in my chair, doing it slow and consistent, adding plenty of pressure. Okay, and we are starting to get this open. This is where I typically feel the bottom, try to sense where I'm at. I know that I haven't got too close, but I know that it's not far, far away. So I'll take my needle tool. It's about 2 inches long, 1.5 inches, and I will press it down and see how close I am to that wheel head. And this is telling me I got plenty of room left. So I'm going to go ahead.
Is there a reason why you are making like opening in other than before you center it all the way?
Say that one more time.
Before
Yui?
you center it all the way, so you are just making opening right now.
Yes.
But in other than, is there a reason why you not center it all the way?
Oh, like this right here is not perfectly centered?
Right, that's the
Big-
bottom part.
It's a good question. So there is going to be parts on this that aren't perfectly centered right now, but the whole process is centering. The opening is centering, pulling is centering, shaping is centering. So maybe in the beginning you want to get this thing perfect. Chances are with this amount of clay, you're going to really use a lot of water. You're going to get it, pretty soft. It's better to get 95% center and then correct it as you open. But anyway, I know that this is only about that far. So I want to press down a little farther. I like to have about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. So I'm literally going to use my fist. And I'm pressing down. And with my left hand, I'm doing sort of a C grip. And I'm kind of squeezing. And I'm also pressing down with the palm of my hand, which creates a little bit of a compression for the clay, which is setting it up in the right direction.
Gary, when you have a chance, would you be able to pull your hand out and show us how you're holding?
Exactly.
Okay.
Just like that.
So, all right.
On the floor.
Okay.
Yes. Literally using my fist, the flat of my fist, to squeeze down on that clay. And now it's about 1/2 inch. And that clay is very well compressed. It's opened. It's about 3.5, 4 inches wide, which is perfect. It's where I want it. And I may even open up the floor even a little more, maybe 5 inches. Okay, so we're doing good there. And now I'm going to start setting this up for colds. So we've used a lot of water. So I'm literally just pressing in. And making a basic pull, I mean, just like that. And I like to keep this base here real clean of skirts. You'll see a lot of people and they get like a little thin layer of clay that kind of sticks out, and it's usually oblong. Get rid of that, get this base centered, because the base of your piece is going to be like your reference point when you're making pulls. And if that's off, then it's sending you in the wrong directions, or it's just setting you up for failure. It's a lot easier just to have that clean and as center as you can get it as a reference point. Okay. And make one more pretty good pull.
When you're working with this much clay, are you using a knuckle or what are you using?
With this one right now,
Just a sponge?
when I take my fingers away, you can see literally, you can see it's 2 or 3 fingers
Yep.
that are pressing in. And on this side, I'm using a sponge so I don't gouge the clay,
Okay.
but I'm only using probably these fingers that
Okay.
are clean and part of my thumb.
Okay. So it is a knuckle, just a different
It's like
side.
fingertips.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I'm pressing in, and they're right across from each other. And I'm allowing it to create like 1 or 2 rings. So I get underneath the clay,
Mm.
and then I squeeze as I go up. Okay. Once I get it to this stage, then I'll start gathering because I want to get this tall. So get it wet again. I try to use 4 points with my hands. Look at that. And the goal is to get it in that shape I talked about earlier, leaning into itself, and also to thicken the walls. I want to go up, in, until I reach my height, and I can start really truing up things. When I true things up at the very end, the lip will be wobbly. Everything's going up, including all the irregularities. The closer I can get it to center, as it goes up, the more the lip will start to wobble. And then you just trim that irregularity off, and that's that. Okay, so one more gathering. All right, there it is. From here on, I'm probably going to need to be standing in order to keep it ergonomically sound, I guess, would be the thing to say it. I'll also use a little bigger sponge. Add a little water. Press the lip. Okay. So one decent pull. Okay, so we're developing a skirt at the bottom. Time to clean that off. Time to go in, up, until you've reached your height that you're trying to get and the thickness of the walls that you want. So more water. now.
Gary, I have a question that just
Sure.
came in.
Sure, sure.
What would you suggest if you want to throw taller than the length of your arm?
Well, the best thing to do is to get this part at least as developed as you can, thickness wise and height wise, so that when you get to your final pulls, most of the extra height that you're gaining is from the limit of your arm up.
Okay.
So, and that happens.
So you're
You can-
basically throwing the bottom to where it needs to be.
Yeah, you want to get
And then-
this at least as thin as this.
Okay.
If you're going to reach down there and you can't reach it,
Yeah.
because you can always trim that off, but you
Yeah.
don't want a big chunk down there that could potentially be part of the piece, but you can't reach it no longer because it's so big.
Yeah.
And that's rarely going to happen with 20 pounds, but I mean, it could.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've necked this in. Now we're going to make another pull. And what you'll notice is my arm is bigger than the hole. So we're going to put lots of water right there. A little more. All right, I can just touch the bottom, just barely. So definitely want this to turn a lot when I'm down here. Oops. And you gotta be careful not to create a suction because you can really throw your pot off. I'm literally trying to feel what the lip is doing while I'm pulling with my arm as a sensor. Tells me like what's going on with it. While I'm also like feeling with my fingers. At this point, going in is not necessary anymore. Now it's time to do another pull and go straight up. Make sure this part is wet. We're no longer getting the pot wet, we're getting ourselves wet. And I like to keep my foot on the pedal so I can totally control the speed. There's times when I need to go slow. There's times I need to go fast. And that's going to be different for every single person. I feel like I can pull more when I'm going faster, but I lose control of the piece. So there's a Goldilocks kind of speed.
Jerry, I have another question.
Sure.
Is your inside hand even or slightly above your outside hand when you're doing
It's about like that.
that? Okay.
Maybe a ½ inch above it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. The inside hand wants to press with these first fingers
Mhm.
in and create a spiral. The spiral on the outside is just underneath that spiral. And then this finger a lot of times will break out and I'll touch the side wall on the other side in order to feel what's going on with that pot. If it starts doing this, I know that I'm going too fast, going too slow, I'm losing the piece. Sort of a sensor for me. Okay. So now I'm going to get all water out of the bottom. With my right hand. And kind of sponge off the inside. And honestly, if I'm in a position where I'm not in a big hurry or I have two others waiting to be shaped, then I would call this piece ready for some rest. Actually try to get all the slip off of it. Try to let it sit up for a while.
How thick are the walls right now?
Right now, the walls are probably somewhere between an eighth or a quarter.
Okay.
There may be some places down in here, like the bottom fifth
Right.
or fourth,
It's gonna be-
where it's half
Yeah.
half inch.
Okay.
which tells me that there's a lot of opportunity still to stretch this out, to
Okay.
shape it.
Okay.
Because the more you go out, the thinner those walls get.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go as thin as you possibly can unless you're doing a tall form and that's what you're throwing.
Okay.
If you're going to bring it out, try to allow for a little bit of thickness and material there so that they can stretch.
And then when you rest it, do you prefer to leave it on the wheel spinning? Do you prefer to blast it with heat at all? What's your
Yeah,
preference?
typically what I do is I get all the slip off of it. That's the
Yep.
first thing. Then I will usually go to another wheel and let it sit on the wheel that I threw it at about this speed. Sometimes I'll even put a piece of paper in the top so it creates a vortex
Mhm.
and helps it dry on the inside as well as the outside. But I get all the slip off.
So just like a cone of paper?
Yeah, just a
Okay.
triangular piece of paper I'll put on the inside,
Okay.
bend it. I can actually demonstrate that.
Yeah,
but
that'd be just a piece of computer paper?
yeah, computer paper would work or a paper napkin.
I'll set it here.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
So I will fold it like this. I will fold it like this. And I will attach it to the inside like that. Deeper, actually. Have it lean in a bit.
So it's just catching air to go in there when.
Yeah.
Really
And
cool.
I mean, is it substantial? No, it's not as substantial as a heat gun. And I will use a heat gun a lot of times once I get the slip off of it. But this just adds to the process. It's better to do it than not do it. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So that's something that you'll see me do from time to time, especially if it's really wet and I'm really trying to get it dry. I'm going to go ahead now with a large rib. I'm basically just going to get anything off of this that's real wet. Really trying to get the slip off. As you can see, there's plenty there. So the merit to throwing at this point dry and to quit using water is the longer you throw it, the stronger it gets because the drier it gets.
Mhm.
Where before you were just dumping water on it to get it to a state where you could shape it. So as you throw and as you develop skills to throw larger, you want to get done with centering quick. You don't want to stagnate there. You don't want to keep the clay wet for too long. The sooner you can get it to this state right here, this period of time that you're working with it, the better. Okay. Do one more of these. Okay. Now, if I had another wheel, I would just move to the next wheel and start throwing another piece. But since that's not the situation, I'm just working on one wheel, and most people would be doing this in like their home studio or somewhere where there's not a lot of wheels available. Maybe everybody's taking the wheels that's in the place that you're working. I just pop this off and put a new bed on. And sometimes it's a little tricky to get these to break. But I usually use a needle tool, just wedge it, break the seal. It's usually a little bit of a vacuum. Put over. And I'll just move this out of the way to dry.
Oh my goodness.
And start the process again. So in throwing, I like to put a little bit of water on the wheel head so that there's water between the bat and the wheel head. It creates kind of a vacuum. Press it down really good. If there's any warps or anything in the bat, it kind of helps it to suck it down. Okay. Use this one. On to piece 2.
And really quick, just because we didn't do this at the beginning, I'm going to, Gary, is it okay if I pick up your big pot back here?
Yeah,
Just to show people this pot back here is one of Gary's,
I'm going to wash my hands and be right back.
yeah, is one of Gary's, you can see it's quite large. So
It's
this
a
is what
English
he
porcelain.
gets. That's out of English porcelain. So getting it up to that size with that clay, for anyone who's worked with porcelain, you know that that's quite a feat. So that's kind of where he's going with these. Just while he's washing his hands, another thing that I wanted to mention during this video, we do have our raccoon night coming up on, is it October 12th? I believe it's October 12th. It starts at 4:30 and goes until we're done firing. It is a lot of fun. Tickets are sold out. So if you haven't signed up yet, you won't be able to get into the firing. It is the 12th. However, it is a lot of fun. And if you wanted to just drive by, walk through the neighborhood, you could walk over to some of the restaurants or bars or Betty Ray's, get some ice cream after, and come by and see us set some stuff on fire. So it's going to be a fun time. We will also be doing some fundraising. If you are at the Guild often, you know that we are working on our capital campaign fundraiser right now. We desperately need a new building. We have outgrown this space, and so we are working very hard at raising money. So we'll be having some silent auctions, raffles, that kind of stuff, which I believe, even if you're not part of the event, you would be able to participate in. I will have to check that for sure, but I think so. Yeah. So, yeah, good way to get some cool pottery or gift baskets or lots of stuff. So Gary's back.
Yep.
I'll hand it back to him.
All right, thank you, Deborah. All right, so I will go ahead and do exactly the same process we saw just a minute ago. And if you missed that, well, here's an opportunity to see it again. Doesn't hurt to see it several times. There's a lot in that little rudimentary centering, opening, setting up for success. That's really critical. So I'm just going to press this as close as I can to center. That's all I'm doing. I want it to be center before I put water on it, if I can do that. Closer to center, the better. Okay, I'm just going to kind of check it. Check it with a finger, check it with a needle tool. Okay, and there's a hump here, this side. It's a little better. Not bad. So add water to it. Lock my elbow into place. I let all my weight go straight down. I lock that elbow as close as I can to my body, and then I lean in. I gather with this hand. And I'm trying to drive through the center with my left hand, the palm of my left hand, into the clay. I gather. And the clay should slightly go up. And I try to get the clay to conform to my movements. It's like a direct reflection of the way I move. Why I try to stay stationary and drive through that center.
Gary, do you skip
Yes.
coning just because you don't usually cone when you throw, or just to avoid getting more
Coating's
water?
really kind of good to get that clay consistent and to feel the clay and to get into it. When you're dealing with 2 or 3 pounds,
Right.
once you get to 20, you can work out some muscles doing
Okay. Okay.
doing coating. You can,
Okay.
but I try to keep everything as efficient as possible. So where water benefits you, I use it. Where
Yeah.
it doesn't, I take it away. For centering, I try to get it done in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm explaining a lot, but typically I'll center in a minute. I'll open in 2 minutes, and then I'm already raising it up in 4 minutes.
Okay.
And then the pulls, I might spend some time doing that for a little while. You know, really pay attention to what's going on with the clay. The 15 minutes is a standard cylinder, if
Okay.
less.
Yeah.
So-
Question from online: what is the largest amount of clay you've ever thrown?
Oh, I've tried to center 100 pounds, and I've thrown 100 pounds before.
Did you do that by centering one piece or stacking multiple pieces?
I've done multiple pieces many times. I've thrown like 30 pounds, then another 30 pounds, put them together.
Okay.
Yeah, I've made
Okay.
6-foot tall pots, but honestly, that's just not my jam.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. There's people out there that are really incredible at it.
Oh
But
yeah. Danny
I mean,
Messenger.
Danny
Meisinger, I
yeah,
forgot
he's the
Meisinger.
best I can think of that does that,
Amazing,
you know,
yeah.
that I've ever seen. But as far as me doing that, this is sort of the weight I like to work with. Or if I'm going to do a double form, 2 of these.
Okay.
I remember the very first experience I had walking into a clay studio. I saw a big, huge white English porcelain pot about this big. It was made by a guy named Chris Staley. I think he might be Pennsylvania State or Yale, maybe, or somewhere like that. One of the Ivy League schools. Very well known in the 80s, 90s. He went to the Art Institute of Kansas City. He was doing a demo, and he left this piece at the school at Johns County Community College. I was like, wow, that is so awesome. I can't believe that. That is so neat. I think I'll just sit down and make it.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't even know how to throw. I had a square block of clay on the wheel before anybody even came in. Didn't know that you used water, and just tried to center this brick of clay. And it threw me around, and the teacher came in. He just started laughing at me. He goes, "What do you think you're doing?" I'm trying to make that thing up there. He goes, "Maybe you should get a lesson or 2 first."
Yeah.
So that was my ambition for the first semester, was make a big white pot.
Well, you
like
got
Chris
there
Steele.
eventually.
Yeah, so you know, I still like that. I mean, I appreciate all sizes, and shapes, and you know, types of pottery. But I gotta admit, throwing larger stuff like this size, intermediate size stuff, is kind of my jam. That's what I like to do.
That is not intermediate size for most of us.
Yep. So I'm doing exactly what I was talking about. I'm just gathering and driving towards the center, the middle, and middling the clay until it's up and feels pretty center. That's probably 90% for me. But for me, 90%, typically it's enough. It's better to get it really close than to try to be a perfectionist. And you know, spending 5 or 10 minutes just adding more and more water and softening up your clay. I'm opening just like I talked about. I find the center. I drive my thumb into that axis. Open as far as I can. Add water to it. Open Open it up a little more. Change hands. Drive down deeper. Sometimes when you're opening like this, you get a little chunk of clay that does that. But you know that you're on that access point because that was the access point. And I go down as far as I think I dare, which I think is like maybe 1.5 inches or 1 inches. And then I check and see where I'm at. Sometimes I don't need to do anything else, or sometimes I need to go a lot deeper. But this is my gauge. This is telling me right there. So I can go a little farther down. I want to compress that bottom. So I'm going to put my hand in here, use a large sponge, use plenty of water. I'm literally going to put my fist down in here and try to squeeze and open it up and press that bottom. I'll sit there and let it turn and turn and turn as much as it needs to. Compress that bottom, especially if it's porcelain. And then I'll check it again. Yeah, so I've gone down about 1/2 inch. I could go down a little farther, but that's probably just fine. So I'm going to open up that floor, keep it horizontal. I'm pressing with my thumb against the wall. And I'm creating a ring. And I'd say the floor right now, this very minute, is probably 4.5 inches, 5 inches. Yeah, about 4 inches. So I'm going to start making pulls. Set this thing up for the next stage. Get rid of the skirt. Gather it in a little bit. Make another pull. More water. Gather it in. Use the 4-corner method that I talked about. Trying to mostly use pressure in 4 points. All the irregularities are coming to the top. I know that because the lip now is no longer flat. It's doing this, which tells me that the irregularities that were at the walls are now being transferred to the lip. And that's the best way to get rid of them, is to bring it up, then cut that irregularity off horizontal, and now it's removed from the piece. I'm going to do another gathering. I could trim this lip now. I think I will. Cut this piece off. Compress this. Trim it up a little. All right. And now I'm going to make a pole standing up, and from here, they'll all be standing up.
So keeping yourself stable,
Mhm.
is it okay if I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
now, or- okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
While you're standing, are
Mhm.
you, I kind of can see maybe your right elbow is in towards your body.
Yep.
So, okay,
I'm going to
So
actually
you're
stop
still-
right here,
okay,
and I'm going to take my hand away, and I'm going to raise up,
okay,
and I'm going to take my arm away, and my arm is in the crook where I'm bent over,
okay,
just like the way it was when I was centering. Now I'm stabilizing it by pressing it against my body,
got it,
pressing it, and then going in.
okay,
When I'm centering, I'm pressing down and in.
yeah,
So you're always pressing against something that's not going to move in order to stay really straight and really stable. And that just keeps you from losing your center.
mhm,
It gives you a lot more grounded connection. And really, anytime I can touch something, I typically am. Like my left kneecap is touching the splash pan. You know, I'm trying to ground every part of me so that I don't move. And I almost feel like sometimes pulling is like you're kind of towing that line, keeping everything in, you're rising up slow. You're letting
Yeah.
that circle go 2-3 times before you move an inch.
okay,
Real slow, real consistent. And I actually think the opening of this is a good example for everyone to see. When you're throwing larger stuff, you always want to keep this kind of controlled. And this is actually starting to get too big. So I'm actually going to neck it in again. Just the top half. Just going to pull it here. And by doing this, it makes the walls thicker, and it gives me the chance to go taller. Any irregularities will be translated to this lip, and because it's uneven, that's what's happened there. As I've moved that irregularity here on a horizontal plane now, it's gone from here to here, and you just trim it off. This isn't real bad, but I'm going to go ahead and trim it anyway. Pull it in as close as I can.
I need to talk to my mom. Okay.
Trim a little bit. Take that off. And do another pull. Okay. Yeah. Really trying to get a hold of plenty of clay and use more pressure on my outward hand than my inward hand because I want to bring this bottom in. It's starting to get teardrop shaped. That means that I want to try to get this more cylinder shaped. So I'm using more pressure on my outside hand than my inside hand. And I'm pressing in, just creating a nice long spiral and pull all the way up. Towing that line, staying connected, allowing the clay to spin while I squeeze it through my fingers. All right. And if I really want to challenge this piece of work, I can do another pull. I can get it even thinner. I can get it even taller.
I have a
There's-
question from
sure.
Daryl Ann.
Sure.
How long do you let a piece sit before you start shaping?
It depends. It depends on what it was when I put it away. It depends on how soft the clay is. But what I do is I check it, and when it starts to feel like it's still plastic, but it's not leather hard, but it's starting to get what some people call cheese hard, which is not quite chocolate hard, but like soft enough where it doesn't want to flex or move very much. That's when I want to shape. It's too wet to trim, but it's definitely more firm than it was before I got it to dry. So an hour is kind of a good general time period. 2, 3 if it's really wet, or if there's a lot of humidity and it's summer or spring. Winter, they tend to dry out faster. I'm going to do one more pull on this, and then I think it's done. I can usually do, on average, a couple hours for a piece. And then I'll trim it. That's another hour. Usually I'll give it a couple days to dry, and I'll check it, let it dry slow. I'll trim it on the bat, and then I'll trim it on a chuck to carve the foot. So 3 hours for a large piece is like plenty of time to do it, usually. So this piece is pretty much as far as I want to push it. I can go farther, but it's fine. It's good enough. And I want to allow a little bit there for shaping. So I'll quit there. And let's see, so we got 1, 2, 3 now.
Behind you.
How's our time? 7:30. We got about a half hour. Better get into
Half hour to
shaping.
an hour, but I'd say, yeah, let's do shaping.
Okay, shaping, definitely. I'm going to wash my hands.
Okay. I can.
So anything you want to add to that, I'll be back in 2 minutes or less.
All right, folks, let's talk about some guild events again. And now this is my pot.
Can I slip in here?
I'm so talented.
Thank you so much.
So another event we have
No, you're doing
coming
great,
up
guys.
is the holiday sale. Cynthia, can you
I
check
don't
the
even
dates
hear you.
for me? I believe it's December 6th, 7th, and 8th. It is the first full weekend of December.
You're
I
good.
know that there's like December 1st is on a Sunday or something, but it's the first full weekend of December. That's correct? Okay, thank you. So yes, the 6th, 7th, and 8th. I believe it is going to be up at the, do you remember the name of the
Like
church?
I'm in the movie
I
MASH.
should have prepared all this.
Scrub it before
but
surgery, right?
It is.
There you go.
will
Thank
be
you.
All available on our website, kansascityclayguild.org. It's a really great sale.
That's
We
right.
have about 50 artists
That's
come
right.
every year. A lot of local, some people, a lot of guild people, a lot of non-guild people. Just a great place to buy some Christmas gifts and support local art. We will also be doing some more fundraising. We've got some really fun things in mind. So keep an eye out for that. We don't have things completely firmed up yet, so I'm not going to make any announcements, but we are going to have some fun activities for the whole family. So hopefully we'll see you there. Gary's back, so I
Yep.
will throw it back to him.
All right. So I'm going to take this pot off. It's definitely too wet to, I mean, you can shape it right now, but you're going to have more success letting it set up a little bit. Some people use air guns, and there's nothing wrong with using air guns to speed up the process. It can be a crutch, but you definitely can use an air gun to make things happen faster. Let's see. needle tool. There it is.
Karen has asked, how thick would you say those walls are?
How thick?
Mhm.
Let's see. Yui,
No.
come on over. Come on.
You wanna keep it whole?
Yeah,
Karen,
go
you're
ahead
gonna
and
get your
hold
answer.
right there. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
It's just clay. They're that thick.
Wow.
So thank you, Yui.
So there's your answer. It looks like probably about a half an inch to a quarter of an inch with a little bit of thickness at the bottom that can just be trimmed away.
Quarter, and then about the bottom third, you start getting into the half-inch mark.
Yeah.
And then the floor is about 3/4 of an inch, so you can get a good deep foot, carve a good deep foot. Yep. And wet, that's exactly where I want it. You can throw it thinner, but you're gonna have a very delicate piece. And when
Karen
you
says, oh no.
when you start to expand it and shape it, these walls get thin naturally because they're being stretched. So it's good to allow for that process that we're about to take right now. But I'll go ahead and just take this down.
I hate to see it, but it really is satisfying.
I mean, these are all just demo pieces,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, it's good to show it that way. Gives a visual. Okay. So now we'll put maybe this one. Let's do a couple. Unshaping if we can. Okay. This one's pretty firm. This one's pretty soft. I think I'm going to do the softer one. Okay. So at this stage, typically I've already got the slip off of the piece. It's usually drier than plastic, but not quite leather hard. And my tools are typically pretty clean. I'm pretty clean. You don't want to get like a bunch of clay up your arm and let it dry. You're making this nice round sphere, and all of a sudden there's crumbs like coming off your piece, and you're destroying your artwork. So I always clean up everything and make sure that everything's pretty clean. And basically I'm pulling with a rib, but I'm using more pressure now with my inward hand than my outer hand. My outer hand is literally just skimming the surface and compressing it, creating a skin. And the inner hand is a rib. You can see that this is the area that I'm pressing with. Everybody does this a little different. Everything that I'm saying is really just their guidelines or their fundamentals, or there's something to work with in order to make your process yours. There is no like perfect formula to throwing. People are different sizes. They have different sensitivities, different skill sets, with their hands. I mean, a guitarist would probably be or a piano player would probably have an advantage with dexterity over a carpenter, or something like that, but maybe not. Everybody's different.
So you're going in, your hand is dry,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have an inner rib?
Nope.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm touching the surface and I'm letting it skim across, and then once it skims across and I start catching, I use a little inward pressure, and I try to do it over a larger area than a pull.
Okay.
And then on the outside, I'm literally just taking the surface and compressing it. And as I compress it, I can feel it get thinner. So that 1/4 inch wall or 1/8 of an inch wall, once it gets stretched, is going to be half of what it was before. So going too thin and too tall is recipe in shaping to, really make a delicate piece. It's not that you can't do it. It's just, you definitely want to think about the wall thickness for your end piece. I made a lot of pieces that break in the firing because, I trimmed them too thin or I threw them too thin. It's better to have something a little thicker than a little thinner, within the margins. But I'm just pressing out these walls and compressing. And the longer I work, the drier it gets, and the drier it gets, the stronger it gets. So the more I can get away with. There's going to be a stage here in a minute where I'm going to quit throwing. I'm going to quit using this on the outside. I'm going to start using it on the inside. And that's not for everybody. Not everybody can, do that, but it works for me. And it really helps me get some of the really exaggerated shapes I'm after. I like my forms to look very full. Most of my forms are about volume, as well as, height. So you can go out and you can go out. You can also go in. So maybe on this piece here, we'll start to go in. It's the same thing as gathering, like when we were throwing, except for now you're using a rib. And you're just bringing it in a little bit, just like a pull. These fingers are like that. This is sensing the wall, make sure it doesn't get oblong. This one's doing something very similar to that, and these two are using pressure. So we'll do another transition. And honestly, I think this is probably one of my favorite stages because this is where the design happens. This is where you have creative control to make the shape that you want. It's the refinement stage. You can express like a Greek form, a Chinese form, something from history, or something you've never seen before. Just gathering that in with the rib, using more pressure on the inside than the outside. Fingers are just stabilizing it. Now, if I want to do this for 15, 20 minutes, I can make it smaller and smaller and smaller. But for demonstration purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clean rib. I'm going to show you what it looks like to work from the other side. Create volume this way. So I'm literally removing the slip on the inside now. And shaping. Just like what I was doing on the inside. I want to make it as centered as possible. I want the form and the line to have a seamless transition. Okay. I'm going to remove the rib for a second. And remove that much slip. Sometimes I'll stay in a position just like this for 5-10 minutes. Just trying to be as stable as I can and letting that metal rib press into the surface. And slowly, slowly.
I have an online question. How
Sure.
much pressure are you using on the inside rib with the rib?
I would say in the beginning, it's less. And then as I transition into it, more. And maybe, it's hard to quantify, but it's probably not more than that. So a pound, maybe something like that. If you use my arm as the wall, pressing about that much,
Okay.
enough to press that much, until it starts giving me resistance back. And then I know that I've kind of hit a wall where if I go too fast or do too much, I'll start to distort the form. It needs lots of revelations as you shape it.
Another online question. Do you recommend or do you shape without water on small pieces as well? Or is this exclusively for?
Sometimes. So typically when I'm refining a form, like let's say a picture, for example, it's between a small form and a large form. I'll refine it with a rib, and then a lot of the finishing parts are typically trimming from there. Like the bottom third, I'll trim some weight off. I'll carve the foot. Sometimes I don't even carve an actual foot. I'll just carve, the shape and everything. Up in the shoulder now, I'm going to get really kind of aggressive with this. So I'm using this like this kind of a grip. My thumb's on the back side of it. Make sure it's really clean. And I'll literally lift up, starting kind of at this belly section, lifting up and pressing out. I'm finding that limit where it presses back. And I'm letting it turn. Not much clay out of it. The surface of the inside of this piece is actually losing all its rings, all its finger marks. Now it's literally smooth on the inside and the outside. And I can look in there and I can tell where I've got. There's rings. That means that I haven't really done this. So it's going to have a little bit of slip. It's going to be softer. It's probably going to be thicker. And I press. Another thing that happens when you're doing shaping and you're really going for volume, you're going to start losing height. Because the walls will get thinner, but they're also moving out, which brings the top down. So you'll lose 3-4 inches maybe, sometimes more. Just depends on how aggressive the curve is. But once all of this is done, where I'm going with this, and the reason why I'm showing it this way, kind of in its completeness, is I'm going to go back outside and all these lines are going to get really smoothed up. And then I'm going to start looking at the profile of the form. And I'm looking for, where there's opportunity to create proportion and harmony. So stop here for demonstration purposes. I would actually, if I had more time, I'd probably just keep going with this and make the shoulder really wide up in here. But for demonstration purposes, I definitely want to show how you can go back in on the outside. You can neck it in a little bit.
And you're good on time. We've got.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'll really refine this profile. And the advantage of working inside and outside is if there's any distortions from the outside, you can fix it on the inside, and vice versa. And you're really more effective by working both sides. So I'm starting to get that kind of necked in amphora kind of look to it. Okay. 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 Starting to change the profile of the piece a little bit. Once I get the basic shape down where I want it, the next most important part is really to kind of refine the lines. Look for like squared off areas that don't flow, that aren't a continuous seamless line or curve. You want the surface to be smooth, no rib marks. You want it to be real smooth. Unless, you're going for something like, a textured form, chattering, all kinds of things you can do. But if you're going for refinement, I like to trial the outside of this so that it looks really smooth. And then another piece that really kind of helps is using a chamois. I think I have one here somewhere. On the lip, I'll really alter the lip a lot to really give it a finishing, like capital, if you will. Here it is. So this is just a piece of chamois. Smooth. You can use a paper towel if you had to. But, when I have them, I use them. And around this edge here. Just finishes it off nice. We haven't even trimmed yet. When you start trimming, you can take the refinement and go even farther. You may decide to cut this lip off and change the shape completely at the top. But so, yep, basic shape form. Down here, I'll trim off probably like the bottom two, add a foot to it, maybe flip it over. It's a Greek amphora. You can pull handles on this side of it. Whatever you'd like to do. Shape this one now. Okay, let's go. This one's a little firmer, which has its merits, but it can also get too firm on you. So it's good to really figure out where you stand with it before you get started. This one's off a little bit. The thing that's bad about taking it on and off the wheel, that's why I like to leave it on the wheel head and just go to another wheel, is moving it literally can throw it off center. Then you return it and you're working with a completely different form. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. Everything's fixable.
Gary, I might have missed it when I stepped away, but
Mm-hmm.
was this the piece that was firmer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. A little firmer.
And are you treating it any differently or just sort of?
It's been knocked off center a little bit when I set it
so
because
that's
it's
the
been
only
moved.
reason. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the main reason. So what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do actually right now is force it to be more center by throwing really grounded and stiff and really kind of getting it back on track.
Okay. So
And it's helping. It's not completely doing it, but
the
it's-
level of dryness is not affecting how you're.
no, that's really not the issue so
Okay.
much. I mean, it is getting to the stage where it's a little on the dry side.
Okay.
I mean, you couldn't trim it, but like this lip up here is almost leather hard.
Okay.
And then the rest of it's like maybe in between shapeable and leather hard. You know, you can still work with it, but it's getting firm. Sometimes that's advantageous, really, because then you can really stretch it farther. You know, it has a little more tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to get it oblong when it's drier instead of round, because a lot of times it'll get dry on one side due to drafts, or you know it's sitting in one spot. If it's not turning, then one side can get dry. One side stays a little wetter, then you start shaping it, and all of a sudden it's stretching at different rates depending on what side. You're constant, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So the form starts to become oblong rather than round.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to watch out for. Best way to avoid it is just keep it drying on the wheel, you know, and move to another wheel if you have it. If you want to keep throwing or take a big long break. Just pressing this out, squeezing it between my fingers. Yeah, feels good. I could almost go with the bottle shape with this. How are we looking on time?
We're at 8 o'clock and we have till 8:30.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
Good, good.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to neck in this area a little bit. Because this is a little drier, I'm going to actually trim or actually shape a little bit with a wood rib and a larger rib. So, because I can use a little more force without losing it, without it falling. So I'm going to use this rib here. On the inside, I'm just going to press.
That's a nice rib shape. Where'd you get that?
This one, I think I bought it at Bracker.
Okay. What brand is it?
I'm not sure if I've had it for maybe 10 years.
Okay.
Something like that.
Mhm. So you're shaping top down now?
Yep.
Interesting.
Top down on the inside,
Okay.
bottom up on the outside.
Yeah.
And taking off a little bit of clay. It's still wet, but not a lot of slip. So if I really want to go for the shoulder, then I'll leave this bottom third alone. I think that's what I'm going to start doing. It's really trying to get the shoulder to come out a bit. You can definitely go both directions,
Okay.
but typically on the inside, I like to go down. Unless I'm really working like mostly the top third, it's kind of hard to go down. So, I'll just go and press it in one place. Now, start working on the outside. What I like to do is use this as a template. So that curve, I want to put into the clay, this actual shape. So I'll basically start pressing it and gathering it, if you will, with the rib. And just don't move the rib. Just keep it in one spot. Starting to get a little off. It's a little dry. So now I'm using this curve. Now I feel like I need to go on the inside to bring the shoulder out a little more. Okay. Now, transition these two lines together a little bit. chamois. There we go. When it gets this dry, it's a little harder to chamois. This lip maybe even could get trimmed a little bit, but at this stage I'm just going to try to soften it, compress it a little. Looks a little off. Tempted to trim it. Bringing it in.
So do you have a preferred type of clay for throwing when you're throwing big? Is it just based on the aesthetic you're looking for, or are there certain clays that are going to handle better?
There's like several clays that I like to throw with. Recycled's not bad because it's typically aged and it throws and stands up well. It stretches well. It just checks all the boxes. It's the, you know, the good standard clay to throw with. I'm just making stuff and I'm not really concerned about the color of the clay or anything like that. Porcelain, usually English porcelain is my go-to, and brown stoneware. Just kind of basics that I like to work with. I've thrown with, you know, aardvark, obsidian, with, you know, specialized clays and stuff, earthenware, and they all have their personality. Like, especially like earthenware and some of the low fire clays, they're really, you can't use a lot of water with them. Porcelain is very stretchable, but it doesn't like to stand up. So you kind of have to adjust for the clay body that you use. But basically with like something like this, which is a hodgepodge and has a lot of stoneware in it, or any stoneware clay, you're going to do okay with large forms because it wants to stand up more than it wants to stretch. So it won't relax or, you know, lose its rigidity when it gets wet as fast. You get a little bit more tolerance there.
When you have the piece completed, are there any special considerations in drying that come about from the size? Like, do you need to dry slower than your average bear? Or?
Larger pieces, I'll typically like, I'll throw a piece of plastic over it and let it sit for a couple days. Take it off, refine the shape even more than I'm doing here. I'll trim it. Maybe I'll do chattering or I'll add some flair here and there. And I'll refine it, and then I'll put it away, let it dry even more. And once it gets to the point where you can't trim it anymore, or it's done, it's usually a week. I'll just I'll take it off. I'll put it in a chuck. I'll do the foot last. And that at that time, usually the shoulder where the chuck's going to touch it is usually really late leather hard stage or almost bone dry. You never want to let it get bone dry when you're trimming it, but it's very firm and resilient, and it's real easy to just flip it over, stick it in a chuck, trim the foot, and you're done for the most part. Then from there, I just like to make sure that when I totally let it go from late leather hard to bone dry, I'll put a piece of paper towel over it. So if there is any kind of draft or anything, it just doesn't dry really hard on one side and stay leather hard on the other. That's usually it. That's usually about all I do. Porcelain's a little different.
Mhm.
I give it a lot more time to dry. Also, a word of caution: if you're wearing a t-shirt and you start like throwing something with a larger shoulder, it'll grab your clothes and it'll throw off the pot. Just tried to do it a couple times with this. As that shoulder gets wider and wider, it gets closer to your body, and next thing you know, your shirt's caught up in it. So I typically take off watches, rings, anything like that.